Good morning, everyone. Welcome to LisaBug Yoga. We are in the month of February 2023. Our focus is that fusion between Yang Yoga and Yin Yoga. So, the first portion of our practice is a little bit more vibrant, moving practice that's designed to really get the heart rate up, and the poses are focused on strong foundational standing poses. And we'll work on posture and alignment. A little bit toward the end of class, we'll work on that yang side of yoga, which is more of our cooling practice. It brings us into some deeper stretches. I have a focus for today, and that is lengthening the hip flexor, also known as the illio-psoas, or sometimes shortened to the psoas muscles. And these cross right in front of our hips. And it's really a problem area because we spend most of our time, well, not most, but a lot of our time sitting, right? So that area is shortened and tightened. And what's good for you to know is that these muscles actually move through the center of the body and they attach back here in the lumbar area. So if you have some chronic low back pain, sometimes that might be associated with tight hip flexors. So we're really going to work on lengthening them today through a series of standing poses and then also coming down to the mat and balance poses as well. I have a chair, you might need that today, also a couple of blocks and a strap. And I'd like for you to come to your mat, and we are going to focus just briefly on a little bit of Tai Chi. So I've had some requests for that in the Thursday class because some folks are not able to join on Tuesday. And it's just a great way to start to bring the mind and the body together into awareness and to focus and ground. So today, the forms that we do are not going to be progressing forward. They're going to be staying in place on our mat so that we can work on balance. So come with your feet just about hips distance apart and come into what's known as right ball. And it's that imagining that you're holding a little beach ball right in front of your body. We're just going to move the arms around that imaginary ball to where the left hand is on top into left ball. And just begin to rotate that ball. And you'll notice as you do, one arm is lifting up, the other one's coming under. So we've got a nice warming through our shoulders through this movement. And let's do one more on each side, from right ball to left ball, and from left ball to right ball. Good. From right ball, we'll wave clouds or wave hands like clouds. So we'll start to rotate a little bit to the right, and then the arms switch as we rotate to the left. And the arms switch. So similar to rolling the ball, but the hands kind of pass in front of the body as they switch from side to side. And you can start to make this bigger into the twist and really look over your shoulders. Starting to move the neck a little bit, the obliques and the waistline. Let's do one more to each side, from right ball to left, and left ball back to right ball. From right ball, we'll part the wild horse's mane. So start to shift your body weight into the right foot and pick up the toes of the left, and you're barely tapping your toes to the mat. From this right ball position, pick up your left foot, extend your heel out as you strike the heel, slide your hands past one another, and look at the palm of the left hand. The right palm is down by your side, and I want you to squeeze this gluteal muscle, so tighten it for just a moment. And then you'll step backward back into the right ball. So the arms are going to roll like rolling the ball as we step back in. And we'll repeat, reach that left heel out, part the wild horse's mane, tightening your right glute here, give it a squeeze, and then push yourself back to tap your toe, coming back to right ball. Reach it out, part the mane, push away, and come back to right ball. That's a little bit of a balance challenge for sure. Let's do two more on this side. Part. And this is a roll the ball type of action to come back And one more. Reach out that heel. Use your balance. Gaze toward the palm. Come back to right ball. So let's do one roll the ball to come over onto the other foot. Now we're in left ball. So we're tapping the right toes. We'll extend that right heel out, part the mane, and once you're here, squeeze this glute muscle. So tighten it, then push back, do a little roll the ball action. So now your left hand is on top. And we reach the heel, part, push away, rolling the ball, tap the toes. 3 more. Don't forget to squeeze the glute because this is a concept I'm working on for the rest of our practice today. As we tighten that glute right here, we're actually sending a message to the hip flexor to relax. And one more, reach it out, part the mane. Come back into left ball. And then we'll roll the ball back to right ball where we began, and then relax the arms down. Bringing the feet either hips distance apart or closer together, come to mountain pose. Draw your shoulder blades back. And I want you to just notice how your shoulders feel as we inhale the arms up. Bring the hands in front of your forehead so your elbows are out to the side. Extend your spine, pressing those hips forward, tighten your glutes. And then come back up and release the arms down. And one more time. Bring it up. Hands come in front of your forehead. Keep your head neutral. Extend through the spine. Come back up and release it down. So if that felt okay on your shoulders, let's try the hands behind the head. Inhale. Bring the hands here. Gently apply a little pressure into your fingertips and extend through the spine. Come back up and release down. So 3 more repetitions, either hands to the front of the forehead or behind. Feel that connection with your core. And the back bend doesn't have to be big, just enough to lengthen through the spine and to find an abdominal connection. No pain in the lower back. Squeeze the glutes. We're lengthening through that front body and opening up the illio-psoas muscle, that hip flexor. Last one. And release it down. Just notice how you're feeling as you're back here in mountain pose. Maybe a little bit more stretched through the chest and shoulders. And then I'm going to step toward what I'll consider the top of my mat, so I've got some mat space behind me. Staying with those arms extended in mountain, we'll pick up the right foot and step it back just maybe a couple of feet behind you and press the heel down into the floor for a warrior 1. So this is a similar position that we were in when we did part the wild horse's mane. So I want you to squeeze this right glute, extend the arms forward and up, reach, and then as you lower those arms back down, they can either come next to your sides or maybe to prayer position as you step that right foot back in. And we'll try the other side. Step the left foot back, press the heel down, squeeze your left glute, tighten that muscle, reach the arms up any amount, and then step forward either to mountain or to namaste into prayer position. Now we'll step back to the right, squeeze the glute, inhale the arms up, and you have that option to bring the hands either in front of your forehead or behind the head. Lengthen your spine and softly tip back just a little bit. Feel that stretch in the right hip flexor. Come back up and release, stepping forward. And then back with the left foot, a little bit of turnout with that foot. Plant the heel, squeeze the left glute, reach the arms any amount. Then extend the spine. Keep squeezing that left glute. And then come back and release down. Step forward. Let's do one more on each side. Right foot steps back. Activate that gluteal muscle. Reach up. It's okay if you stay right here, or hands can come to the forehead or behind the head. Optional spinal extension. And up and release, stepping it in. One more to the left side. What are you feeling in your body with this sequence? Lengthening of the hip flexor, opening up the lat muscles in the upper back, maybe stretching the triceps. And release down and step back in. Well, let's go back with the right foot, maybe a little further this time. Really squeeze that right glute. Bring your left hand to your hip. The right arm reaches up. We can place that hand again to the forehead or behind the head. And now we'll side bend over to the left. So really open up that hip flexor and the side ribs. Come back up. Releasing the arm down, either in front or to the side, and then step forward with your left foot. Back to mountain, your right foot. Left foot now steps back, maybe a little further than before. We'll bring that right hand to the hip, left arm reaches up. We're either here, in front of the forehead, or behind the head, and then side bend over to the right. Keeping the abdominals engaged, a really good core connection. Come back up and release it down. We'll do two more on each leg. Stepping back right. This is a closed hip pose. We want the hips squared forward. Right arm comes up, left hand to the hip. Lengthen the spine. You can slightly back bend first and then side stretch over to the left. A little bit of balance involved in this sequence as well. And then release down. Step in. Left foot steps back. Press that heel down. Feel a stretch in your calf muscle on that left leg as well. Really open up the ribs. Feel that stretch. Make sure you're still breathing even as you're holding. Stepping in, we'll do one more on each side. Right foot extends back. Squeeze that glute. Try to involve each movement one at a time. Then reach. Then open up the rib cage and side stretch. And come back up and release. Stepping forward. One more with the left foot back. Tighten the left glute. Lift that left arm. Stretch, extend the spine any amount upward and side bend to the right. And come back up and release it down. Step back into mountain. Just check in. See if you feel any difference in the lengthening through the front of the hips, through the side waist, through the chest muscles. And then we'll step the right foot back. This time not planting the heel, but keeping the heel lifted. Bring the arms. Whoa, that was harder to balance. Lisa's got to get her balance here for a second. All right, bring the arms to goalpost arms. Now really pull those elbows back, expand through the chest, and we're focusing on squeezing this right glute. So the more you squeeze it, the more this frontal hip will release. And then step that right foot in, palms can come together. Step the left foot back on the ball of the foot. Squeeze the glute, open up to goalpost. And come back in. Let's do two more just like this on each side. Now I know some of my folks have some trouble with some arthritis in the toes. So if this crescent lunge isn't feeling okay to tuck the toes under and lift the heel, then you can go ahead and plant that foot and do your warrior one instead. And bring it in. But the high crescent gives us more of a balance challenge. And it puts that hip flexor in a little bit different position. Coming in, we'll do one more, left foot stepping back. Open the heart, tighten the glute, lift the chest slightly. I'm spreading my fingers. And bring it in. Pause as we gather together. Now we'll add a slight twist with this. This is going to help us to even open those hip flexors more. So bring the palms at the heart. Step your right foot back, either crescent lunge or warrior one. We'll open up into that goalpost position, and then we're twisting to our left with the upper body. And as you do that really slow, notice that stretch really growing in the hip flexor. Keep your right glute tight. Come back to center. Step the back foot forward, bring the palms to touch. Left foot steps back to the ball of the foot. Tighten your glute, open to goalpost. And take your time here as you twist and go really slow so you have your balance. You can also note how far you want to go. Where is the end range of this for you? And then come back to center. Step forward, press the palms. We have two more on each side. Step back right. Now, if this goalpost arms position isn't feeling comfortable for you, you can still keep your hands pressed at the heart as you twist. You'll still experience that hip flexor release, just not as much of a heart opener. And step that right foot forward. Left foot steps back. Find your balance. Engage your core. Squeeze your left glute and then find your rotation. Make it smooth. Very challenging for balance as we add that twist. Step it in. We have one more on each side. Make sure before you twist you have that connection with the glute. Squeeze, then rotate left. I'm really feeling that lengthening the hip flexor. And step in. We have one more on the left side. Stabilize with your core. Squeeze the glute. Slowly rotate right. And back to center. And we'll step in back to our mountain pose. Let the arms come next to the sides of the body. And as you stand, go ahead and gently contract your gluteal muscles. We'll bring the fists behind the sacrum on each side. Pull your shoulder blades back for a standing camel pose. So with that little bit of engagement of the glutes, let the hips drift forward a little bit and the spine extend any amount. One more breath. Exhale to come up. And then release the arms. We'll sweep the arms. Inhale, stretch. Exhale and swan dive into our first forward fold. And I want you to go slow and just be gentle on this first one and notice how the backs of the legs feel. And we know we can always use a chair in front of us. We can use blocks. We can place the fingertips to the shins. We feel pretty flexible this morning. We can go all the way down to the floor. So with the breath, inhale, rise back up. Option to take your baby back bend here, extending through the hip flexors. Exhale, come forward into your forward fold, softening your knees any amount. Relaxing your neck. And two more. Maybe you're finding a little bit more range each time. One more, breathe it in, stretch up. Breathe it out, come forward into your forward bend. Let's hold here just a few breaths. Hands can clasp your elbows for ragdoll. You can bring the hands behind your thighs to gently pull yourself down. 2 more breaths. Then inhale, rise back up. Nice extension through the spine. Press the palms together as you exhale back to Samastitihi, balanced tension. We're going to go into a hands and knees bird dog with the option to catch the ankle for a kneeling half bow. You might need your yoga strap for that. And I'll demonstrate that with the use of the strap. So if you need that or something else to give you some assistance wrapping around the ankle, have that next to you on your mat. So we'll come back down to our forward fold by taking a nice deep breath, extending down. Once our hands find the mat, we bend our knees and step back to all fours, hands and knees position. So here, coming into bird dog, we'll first extend the right leg back and really lengthen it long. Flex the foot, then extend your left arm forward. Hold and breathe. This very good pose for core conditioning, balance, and stability. Now, at any time, if you need to put the hand back down on the floor, you can. Let's try to bend this right knee. And then by squeezing the gluteal, push your leg up toward the ceiling any amount. So we're firing that glute to open up the hip flexor. We'll take 2 more breaths here. Keep lifting that leg up, up. Stabilize your abs, 1 more breath. And then extend your leg back out. The left hand comes to the mat and the right knee. Let's try that sequence on the other side. So the left leg extends behind. Flex your ankle, really reach that leg way behind you. Right arm comes forward, thumb is up like a handshake position. Then slowly bend your left knee. It's like you're going to put your footprint right up on the ceiling. Then tighten your glute and lift that leg up any amount. And go slow, because sometimes when we activate the hamstring, it wants to cramp for us. So really take your time. Squeeze your glute, releasing that hip flexor, but keep your abdominals drawn in. So try not to let your low back sag. Keep lifting that leg, 1 more breath. Then the leg extends to straight. The hand comes down to meet the mat and the left knee as well. Let's take a moment and round the back up into a cat stretch. So tuck the tailbone under. Sometimes our low back really needs that when we're stretching the hip flexor, because again, that's pulling right down here into those lumbar vertebrae where that attachment is for the psoas muscles. All right, so we're going to repeat this again with the option to reach back and grab your ankle or use your yoga strap to do that. So I'm going to demonstrate the yoga strap option first. So let's take the right leg straight back, left arm straight forward. We can bend the knee and push the heel up to the ceiling as we did before. This is option 1. Or we can take that yoga strap and I'm just bringing it back behind my foot here and making a little loop. I'm going to hold it with my left hand as I push that heel up to the ceiling. If If you don't need your strap, you're catching that right ankle with your left hand, and you're doing the same thing, but holding onto it with your hand rather than the strap. And let's squeeze that glute and hold 2 more breaths. I'm feeling the balance and stability as well. 1 more breath. And then lower it down. You can extend the legs straight if you'd like, or just release that yoga strap, coming back to all fours. If you need a little shake out for your wrists, you can take time to do that as well. Sometimes being on the hands for a bit is a little bit uncomfortable. When you're ready, let's try the other side. So we extend the left leg straight back. Level your hips, the right arm is forward. Option 1, we just bend that knee, squeeze the glute, push the ankle up to the ceiling. Next option, we can take that yoga strap. I'm making a little bit of a loop in it and just bringing my foot behind to find it there, and then reach up. Or we can grab the ankle with the hand as well. And this is our kneeling half bow pose. Squeezing the glute, activating the abs. 2 more breaths. And then release. Coming back to your all fours position. Tucking the tailbone and rounding into a cat stretch to release that pressure in the lumbar spine. So now we'll bring this down to the belly, but if you feel more comfortable staying on your hands and knees, you can continue this process here. Otherwise, we'll lower all the way down to the mat. So we're on our pelvis, hip bones, legs are extended nice and straight, and we can make a pillow for our forehead with the left hand so that we can breathe and our head is in a nice neutral position. We'll slowly bend that right knee as if you're placing a footprint on the ceiling. We can lift that leg up off the floor any amount by tightening the glute. So you can do that here without any assistance, or we can reach back for our yoga strap and bring that around the foot, or reach back with the hand to catch the ankle and extend that leg up. You can also do this from a sideline position. So you can roll over onto your left side so you can get that ankle and pull it back from here, or roll back onto your belly and try from here. So my quads are really, really tight here. So for me in this pose, it almost feels like I'm not getting into my hip flexors at all because my quads are so tight. But I want you to focus on squeezing your glute, lifting that leg up any amount, pressing your frontal hip bone down. And let's stay here 2 more breaths. And then very carefully, slowly release. Come back to both legs straight. Both hands can be under your forehead, and just take a moment to pause and breathe. And then we'll keep the right hand under the forehead. Bend the left knee. Flex your foot. Try to lift that leg up off the mat, squeezing your glute any amount. So this is a great place to stay if it's not appropriate for you to grab that ankle, either with or without your yoga strap. So take a few breaths to see where you can go on this side. And if you've had a knee surgery or knee replacement, maybe having that range of motion to bring your heel to the butt is not there for you anymore. And that's okay. You can still get the stretch without grabbing the ankle. 2 more breaths, slow and controlled. And when you're ready, release it down to both legs straight. And then we need to stretch out that low back again. So a couple ways you can do that. We can press back up to hands and knees to cat stretch. You can press to child's pose. And just find a stretch there in the lumbar spine. So from here, we'll tuck the toes and lift the hips coming up into our downward facing dog. And stretch through the backs of the legs by slowly pedaling out the feet to push one heel at a time into the earth. And you're really pushing away from your hands here to open up the lats. One or two more on each side, depending on your speed of movement. And then dropping both heels to sink down. And then take as many steps as you need to walk your feet back up to the top of your mat where your hands are into forward bend. Pause there for a moment, stretch and lengthen the hamstrings. And then slowly inhale all the way back up to stand. And pressing the palms back to heart center. So we did that hip flexor stretch on the hands and knees. We did it on the belly, and now we're going to do it standing up for the pose of the dancer's pose. So we need maybe a wall or a chair for balance, and you might need your yoga strap to go under the bottom of the foot. So what we'll do is, we've been doing the right leg first, so let's continue that. We'll stabilize our body weight into our left foot and pick up our right knee. So I'd like to see if you have the ability to reach down and catch your ankle and then lower your leg all the way down so it's level with the other leg. So if that's not an option, we have a couple more. So we can just bend that knee and push the leg back behind, just as we did when we were on our knees. We're squeezing this glute, we're opening up the hip flexor. Or we can loop that yoga strap under the bottom of the foot. So you'll make a little bit of a loop, slide that foot through the yoga strap, and then we can pull it up behind us. So depending on what your main focus is, if your main focus is that you just want to work balance with this, then maybe it's not necessary that you catch the ankle or have the rest of the movement just right. If your focus is on the hip flexor, then hold on to something so that you can actually work on what the lower body is doing. So with our dancer pose, we can keep this elevated straight up and reach that left arm upward. Or we can start to tip it forward any amount, like we're coming into a warrior 3. So our body stays in neutral. I'm not going to bend over at the waist, but as I reach forward with my upper body, the knee keeps lifting up behind me. And then I can bring this hand down to my balance source, my chair in this case. And it almost looks like I'm now in that kneeling position with my upper body level to the floor. And let's squeeze that right glute, keep the leg lifting. Wherever you are, let's hold about another 15 seconds. Two more breaths. And sometimes the hard part is coming out without losing your balance. So very carefully rise back up and release back to mountain pose. Ooh, I don't know about you, but that really picked up my heart rate. There was so much of my body that was working hard to do that pose. Before we do the other side, let's inhale, sweep the arms up. Exhale, come into forward fold, essentially doing a counter stretch for the hip flexor by lengthening the low back, and for the quadricep by lengthening the hamstring. Inhale, come back up. And exhaling down. So we need to take our time and see what works for us on this side. So we'll stabilize into the right foot, maybe spread your toes out a little bit, really ground into that foot. Pick up the left knee. And your question is whether you can find your ankle with your left hand and be able to send your knee down toward the floor. So if not, you don't have to hold onto the foot, or you can use your yoga strap. Squeeze your left glute and try to press your knee back. The arm can reach and you can stay right here upright. This can be your dancer pose for today. Or you can be holding onto a wall. Or we can see how far we can dive this forward, any amount. You'll notice as you do, you're lengthening your right hamstring a little bit. And we can use a chair for balance. And there it went. I got to start over. So if you fall out of it, take your time. Start from the beginning and go again. And once you get to your end range, go back to feeling that squeeze in your left glute. Tighten it. Keep lifting that knee. 15 seconds. Two more breaths. And then find the best way for you to come out of that pose carefully. And then releasing back to mountain. Ooh. And then we need that counter stretch. So inhale, reach. Exhale, dive down into your forward fold. Release your low back. Release both hamstrings. Release the neck and shoulders. And from this forward fold, we'll step the right foot back behind us. Drop our knee down into a kneeling low lunge. So you can come up and support here. This is one of the best hip flexor stretches we can do if we get into this pose correctly. So what we're wanting to do is lengthen out this right hip flexor again. Sometimes we're a little shy about how far we move this knee back behind. So I would say my most frequent mistake I see is that this knee ends up being right down here or even to the front. So we have to move this right knee back behind the hip as far as we can. So you can keep inching it back. And once it's back as far as you can, then we'll lift the chest. And let's try taking that right arm up. If it feels comfortable, you can bring it either to the front of your forehead or behind your head. Extend your spine. You can also lift both arms. Squeeze your right glute. 2 more breaths. And then release it down. Now I'd like for you to bring both hands to the middle so they're inside the front foot and walk that foot out to the side a little bit. And then we'll hold a stretch down low here. Now if you have a block and you want to come down onto your elbow for a little bit lower stretch, or you might even be able to bring your elbows all the way down to the floor, If not, the block can be used to support your hands. So I want you to find the deep position here to open up that hip flexor, and we're also stretching out that front glute. And we're just here 2 more breaths. Then press yourself back up to your hands. And we'll just take this front leg and bring it around to meet the back leg and come into child's pose. Child's pose again is a good counter stretch for that deep hip flexor work we did, or you can take a cat stretch as well. And then we need to reverse. So as we come up, now the right foot that was in back will step forwards. We'll just take a nice big step with that foot and a generous step so that when we drop the hip, this back knee is behind the pelvis, not stacked right underneath. So we want to shift forward as far as we can. We can support right here on the thighs. Square those hips off. Squeeze this left glute. That's going to really help that hip flexor let go. And then let's try lifting the left arm up. Maybe it comes in front of the forehead or behind. And then we lift the spine upward and slightly back to really lengthen that hip flexor. Keep the engagement of the glute, the engagement of the core muscles. 2 more breaths. And then we'll rise back up. Bring both hands to the inside of your right foot and walk that foot a little wider on your mat. And then we'll hold this low stretch. So sometimes I feel that hip flexor stretch a little deeper if I kind of roll my hip down. Does that kind of make sense? Maybe experiment with that and see if you can feel that. And you can use your block. Maybe go lower to your elbows. And you'll really feel this also in this glute and upward attachment of the hamstring on the right leg. Let's hold 2 more breaths here. And then coming up, press to both hands. This front foot will just swivel around to meet the back leg and come either into cat stretch or child's pose. And in our child's pose, we can also bring our hands right next to the sides of our feet with our palms extended upward. This is that traditional balasana. Just checking in on the low back, checking in on the shoulders and the neck. And then we'll rise back up to prepare to come down onto the belly one more time for locust. And locust is a wonderful spinal extension, but it's also a great strengthener for the low back. So lower yourself all the way down. And we'll start our locust just by slightly pressing the hands right underneath the shoulders. Lengthen your legs nice and long and try to lift both of your legs up off the mat any amount. And then let your upper body lift as well. You can either hold this very stationary, or you can lower and lift a couple of times. So you have a little break in between. And we're gently squeezing those glutes, strengthening the low back and stretching the hip flexor. And then let's hold that locust 2 more breaths. And then relax down. You can make a pillow for your forehead. Let everything relax. So we'll have that opportunity to do locust one more time, or your second option is full bow pose if you're able to grab both of your feet behind you. So our first option of locust, lift up your chest, extend your legs up off the floor any amount, and then reach back behind you with both hands, like you are going to reach toward your feet. Your full bow pose option is to reach back to find your feet behind you, taking hold of your ankles and lifting up the chest and lifting up the knees any amount away from the mat. Wherever you're at, let's hold 3 more breaths. Watch your head position. Try not to look up too much. Keep the back of the neck long. 1 more breath. And then relax, release, and let's press up to our counter stretch. Child's pose or cat. I'm going to take cat this time. Tucking the tailbone under. I really want to lengthen this portion, the lumbar spine. And then take your time to roll over onto your back as we start to move into a few more longer held poses for yin practice. Also, if you have a block or even kind of a dense pillow, we're going to be doing a hip flexor stretch by placing that underneath the sacrum. So have something at the ready to slightly elevate your hips up off the floor from bridge. And that's where we're going to start actually, is in a bridge pose. So we'll place the feet about hips distance apart, press all 4 corners into the mat of the feet, and lift your hips up off the mat any amount. Squeeze your glutes. We've been doing this before. And if your fingertips are reaching back toward your feet here, this is almost a reverse of that full bow pose that we did laying on the belly. We've just got it turned upside down. And we feel some work in the glutes and in the hamstrings. So this is where we're going to insert something underneath the sacrum to keep the hips lifted and supported for us. So I'm going to take my block on the medium height and slide that right underneath the sacrum. So we're not sliding it in under our low back where our spinal bones are. We're sliding it under our pelvis, this really strong portion of our hips. So now we're in what we call supported bridge. So the block or the pillow or whatever we have underneath there is supporting us and keeping our hips up. From here, let's bring your right knee up into table, or you might even be able to clasp behind your knee or even pull it over your shin in toward your chest. Then the right leg will slide out to straight to open up the hip flexor. And this is a wonderful passive hip flexor stretch. And another great way you can do this is from your bed. So you can lay back on your bed, and the edge of the bed would be right at the edge of your hips here, and your leg that's extended would be hanging off the bed toward the floor. And let's hold here. I'd like to be here a minimum of 2 minutes, if that's tolerable for you. And we can also just gently squeeze that right glute as we're holding this. So we can relax and be completely passive, or we can add that reciprocal inhibition, which means when we tighten a muscle, the opposite, or the reciprocal muscle, needs to be inhibited or completely relaxes. And let's come to the breath nice and slow, inhaling and exhaling through the nose. We'll stay here one more minute on this side. Now, if you're at home and for some reason you don't have anything at all to place under your hips, this is still a great pose. It's called our wind relieving pose, and we can do this without the hips elevated and still have a wonderful benefit from holding this pose. It's a great release for the lumbar spine. A little bit of a stretch through the left glute and the upper attachment of the hamstring. And we've got just a few more seconds to hold 10. And then we'll pull that right knee back into bend to set your foot down onto the mat. Then your left foot comes back to join. And just pause there for a moment. See if you need to adjust that block or blanket underneath your pelvis at all. And then we'll pull the right knee up toward the chest. You can just stay there and table, or you can draw it in closer by using your hands. And slowly slide your left leg, your heel just slides along the floor. Slide it out to straight. So sometimes this can be done as a test for your hip flexor flexibility. Sometimes physical therapists will use this test. And I know there's a name for it. It's not coming to my mind right now, but this is a specific test to test the flexibility of your hip flexor. And some folks are not able to touch their foot to the floor with their hips elevated about 3 inches. So if that's you for today, you can kind of see some room for improvement and maybe try to work this stretch into your daily routine. If you're pretty flexible, you might be in this position saying, wow, I really don't feel anything at all. And that's okay if you don't feel much of a stretch. It's good for maintenance, keeping that flexibility. And we have about 30 seconds left on this side. Come back to the breath. Squeeze your glute if you'd like to find more of a stretch. Three more breaths. And then that left heel slides along the mat as we set the foot back down. And the right foot comes down to meet it. Pause there, notice how you feel. Now, if you're feeling a lot of pain and tension in your lower back, that's probably too much of a stretch for your hip flexors right now, and you need to get that block out from underneath your hips. So if that's you, go ahead and press up off that block and come flat onto your back. If you can maintain this for a little while longer, you can try extending both legs straight out along the floor to release both hip flexors at the same time. But this could be a lot of pressure in your lower back. So I really want you to be very careful and to know if this is okay for you today. And if it's not, slide the block out. Just take a regular Shavasana position. You can also lift your arms above the head. That might give you a little bit more sensation of stretching the hip flexors. And we'll just be here 3 more breaths. And if you're still on the block, we need to make our way off the block. So let's press the feet into the mat. lift those hips up any amount back in our bridge pose unsupported. Then slide out your prop. From here, roll down one vertebra at a time. Try to tuck your tailbone at the very last moment as that lumbar spine finds the mat. Then our counter pose today will be Happy Baby. So we'll bring both knees up to the chest. And this is level 1 of Happy Baby, just holding the knees right in. Level 2, we'll bend our knees at about 90 degrees so it looks like we're putting a footprint right up on the ceiling. And we can reach our hands, if that's accessible, to the outside blades of our feet and try to pull our knees down toward the armpits. You can also grab your ankles and pull down, or you can grab behind your thighs and give a little press. So we want that lumbar spine to lengthen and release any tension from lengthening those hip flexors. We can also rock this from side to side a little bit. And we'll stay about 1 more minute in your version of Happy Baby. Eyes can be closed for a few breaths as we bring our awareness back to our breathing. Long, slow inhalations and complete exhalations. Two more breaths. And then begin to think about the way in which you'd like to come up to a seated position. If you'd like to grab behind your thighs and just roll like a ball forward and back a couple times until you have the momentum to sit up, you can, or you can roll over onto your side and use the strength of your arms to lift yourself all the way up to seated.